In this real-side experience, what would transpire was along similar lines to what I have shared before. And of course, if an experience is repeating itself, then the means by which that experience originally came into being must be doing likewise. In regards to experiences in creation, as the deciders, it is we who generate our simulated experiences based on the ideas we create, agree with, where we place our focus and attention, and the nature of our intent. For the mechanics of creation is such that when awareness assumes a body vehicle where free will is available, until that point the body forms had been directly animated by real awareness, a real awareness that, although doesn't recognize the isness it is a part of, will still operate in a way through the body vehicles that makes sense with all life, is awareness and life supporting, as this is the essence of life, the is, that of a constant recognizing of the endlessness that it is, via the various aspects or real awareness units of it, that as the real awareness units do recognize the is, as the real awareness is a part of the is now recognized, this recognition becomes thus more so a recognition the is has of itself. And as this is the only objective of the is, naturally then, body vehicles directly is, or real awareness animated, will operate in such ways that are not awareness detracting or life destructive. Although the recognizing of the is can only be achieved by comparison, and were the body vehicles to remain directly real awareness animated, remaining in this nowness, real awareness isness state of being, the real awareness would be no closer to recognizing the is it is a part of. To create comparison, then, requires something that isn't this isness everything, real awareness nowness state of being, and at a certain point, so will this is objective, of the continuous recognition of itself, express as body forms assumed, where a state of being can be established, which isn't this nowness, real awareness, everything isness position, a secondary position assumed, where awareness self creates, or self decides, free will activating the mechanics of the body vehicles, rather than just perpetually maintaining this nowness, real awareness position. For the moment we activate the body vehicles, we create thought, emotion, ideas, we are removed from this nowness, real awareness position, as anything created through the mechanics of creation is experienced via the body vehicles that decode these created ideas into a simulation, as creation is designed that we can experience parts or pieces of the whole, in that we can compare the pieces to the everything isness, and recognize then the whole, the everything life is, from the parts we have isolated and encapsulated and boxed into a simulated experience. And as we are removed from our real awareness positions, our true beingness states, we assume the secondary or personal self-positions, as we so free will activate the mechanics of the body vehicles. This then affords us overall our comparison, the nowness of the real awareness everything position, and the personal self that comes to the fore as we create ideas through the body vehicles. And through this back and forth between the two states of being, or a comparing of the ideas we create to this nowness everything position, the parts compared to the whole, will we eventually begin to recognize the difference, and recognize the isness we, our real awareness, is a part of, as this is, after all, the purpose of creation and the simulators. What tends to happen, however, is an over-indulgence in free will creating, an over-immersion in the personal self, and eventually the being rather becomes lost in the illusions of a simulated creation, the ideas are generated via the body vehicles, and a disconnect from the real awareness that the being actually is maintained, until such time that is, a lifetime, where the reconnection is re-established, the recognizing of how to assume once again the real awareness, nowness, everything position, and then the process of effacing the personal self and creation, the dismantling, destructuring of the consciousness of agreements and attachment taplines begins. But ultimately we can see that we are the deciders. We create our simulated experiences based on what we activate, the ideas we generate and agree with. For the ideas we create, or the ideas of others we agree with, become as files in the consciousness, like files in a computer, and then the body vehicles effected also from consciousness decode these files into a simulation, like the computer monitor screens, where the files contained in it are rendered for us to see. And so, if experiences are repeating themselves, we are activating, creating then the same ideas which are effecting these same experiences. And as the process of awareness entails a continuous becoming more so aware, that we complete our awareness, that we become fully aware, that nothing remains subconscious and veiled, everything laid bare, and then the decision to release all the ideas, everything of a creation and the consciousness, and then a continuous awareness and recognition of the isness. Then as this intent is established, that of the recognizing of the is, so will a simulated experience roll out accordingly to that end. With everything being what it is now, in isness reality terms, an intent is already the completeness of itself, and we then just go through the simulation of what is already in effect, a completed movie, assuming the intent doesn't change, or the movie will do likewise, and the simulation to this now different but still completed intent must change in accordance. And as it is a process, it is one that can't by its very definition become static or unmoving. It must be constantly evolving to its culmination point, the actualization of intent placement. And so, realistically, all the personal self has to do is place its intent with the ease, and rather sit back and just experience the ride. But what tends to happen is the personal self rather delays or disrupts the process somewhat, for as certain ideas of the created consciousness are unveiled, some are harder to release than others, are clung onto. And anything we cling to, any idea of the consciousness, we are deciding to experience the effects of, and we can experience the same ideas forever if we so decide. And not just the same ideas, but perhaps also the same idea considerations we additionally create in response to certain experiences, for these responses can be very routine and ingrained in the consciousness. And so, not only do we tend to generate similar experiences through continuous patterns of thrill-seeking ideas we cling to, but that which we additionally create, ideas in response to our creations, tend to be along similar programmed patterns of repetitiveness also. And on the real side then, as we have our views and guide-provided experiences, very often through our reactions, our created considerations, or actions in response to what we are being shown or experienced, will the experience go along certain avenues accordingly. And so not only can the real side provide verification that we are perhaps clinging to the same ideas, made apparent by the same experiences we are having, or perhaps maintaining emotional attachments to individuals, that they constantly appear in our real side experiences, as the real side is a reflection of that which we are, that which we decide to be, our intent and the ideas we hold to, but also very often the guide-provided experiences will repeat themselves for this same reason, that we hadn't recognized that which the guides were attempting to convey, and a lesson not learned is one that must be repeated. And also, if we conduct ourselves in certain ways, if we respond or react through the personal self in the face of certain real side experiences, causing the experience to go along certain lines, oftentimes the guides will set up similar situations again, that we have the opportunity to make adjustments to our reactions or actions, to choose differently and in ways that make more sense. Ideally, we would endeavour to maintain our real awareness, nowness positions. Then we are always operating in ways that makes sense with life, and the real side experiences will roll out in the best possible way in regards to being life and awareness beneficial. Any inclusion of the personal self, and this can somewhat disrupt what would have been the most perfectly executed experience with its maximum awareness benefit. And so, as I said at the beginning, this experience was along similar lines as I have shared before, that the guides had rather set up the situation, that I then had the option to deal with it in a different way than I had before. As I said, ideally, that I ought to maintain my real awareness nowness position, that the experience unfold in the best possible awareness bolstering way. But in this case, not only was the experience similar, but how I dealt with it would be along similar lines, and so overall the entirety of the experience was relatively the same. It was all really based on the necessity and importance of remaining in the nowness of the real awareness. For the real awareness is a part of all real awareness, that is this isness everything reality. As such, the real awareness that we are is through all consciousness, irrespective of how the detached personal selves may consider themselves to be separate from all others, for it is in reality this one isness everything, animating through all consciousness and effected body vehicles throughout every created simulator. As such, the consciousness of all is perusable to the real awareness. All the ideas that make up its construction, including intent, can be determined and then afforded the personal self by way of impressions, that we can realize the sincerity or deception of all those entering our experience, regardless of how they seem to be from a simulated, literal, surface perspective. The repeated experience was thus, that the new friends have been engaging in the galactic activities is so, and of course this would be known by the ever-watching dark forces. And so, as it was on the previous experience, the dark forces would set up their own galactic-style operation and approach myself, extending the opportunity that I become involved. What can happen is the personal self can indulge in assumptions. We can assume that things are a certain way. Individuals will always be as they always have been, etc. But intent and situations, ideas and agreements are always in a flux, and what holds true one moment may not be so the next. This isn't really an issue if we maintain our real awareness positions, as a discernment of all the ideas that effect into the experience we are having are available, regardless of if they change moment to moment. But the moment we create assumptions, as we so activate the body-vehicle mechanics, for assumptions are like any other idea created, we are drawn into the personal self, and we are absent then of our real awareness, nowness, standing, and all the impressions it can provide as to the ideas and intent of those in our midst. For on the previous experience, so had the dark forces approached me with their offer of a galactic assignment, and had I maintained my real awareness standing, so would I have determined their ill-intended natures and deceptions. However, my personal self would somewhat jump to the fore, eagerly accepting such an opportunity, and immersing in the assumption of its sincerity. As such, the true nature of the situation was unavailable as real awareness impressions, and I would rather get myself in a spot of bother consequently, and in fact, on that occasion, Duane would come in and rescue me. And so, the guides, I would suggest, set up a similar situation again, in that they facilitated the means by which I would find myself in a position where the dark forces once again would extend a galactically orientated operation. Not that the guides instigated the situation, more so just placed all the pieces together, and the dark forces just do as they do, conducting themselves based on their ill-intended, self-programmed consciousness proclivities, and ideally again should I have been able to discern what was another set-up, had I been standing in the real awareness position. But alas, my personal self jumped to the fore again, falling over itself to take on an assignment, losing then the impression input that the real awareness position, now removed from, could have provided as to the intent of the individuals providing the offer. And so it was that I found myself engaged in a number of what seemed like galactic-style operations, along similar themes to what I have shared before, assisting individuals here, carrying out operations there, but throughout there was the sense, the real awareness nudge, that something was amiss, as all the operations had a kind of insubstantial essence about them, as though they were not affording any benefit, despite how it seemed on the surface. For indeed, as it transpired, it was a dark force set up, but one made to look as though genuine, that I was actually participating in a life and awareness beneficial galactic assignments, and the dark forces had gone to great lengths to pull off quite the show, but as I said, throughout it all, the nagging sense that something wasn't quite right, not full-blown impressions via the real awareness at that point, as evidently I wasn't standing in the full nowness reality of it, where such impressions would have been assured. The assignments completed, I would now be deployed to a place where I was to receive a counsel from the guides, So the initial assignment offering individuals who had approached me would proclaim, and so I would accompany a number of others and we would embark, but it seemed our journey to rendezvous with the guides would have us travelling through a very gloomy and uninviting swamp-like area, certainly not a place you would expect to have as a meeting place with the guides. Further hints then I would suggest, for the dark and dismal swamps this group and myself waded through had the sense of being somewhat lower astrally based, as I have had experiences in the lower astral before, and you get somewhat familiar with the feel and look of the place. For of course, due to the choices of individuals, through how they construct their consciousness, that which they do, and their conduct in creation, dictates and effects creational positioning. Everything reflects and is itself. An abrasive, ill-intended consciousness design will affect the body form into equally as abrasive circumstances. And the lower astral is the established positioning for the dark forces in all their expressions and forms, and I can imagine that if individuals were to continue to become ever more twisted and abrasive, so must positioning be created and effected from such a consciousness, and as simulators become very old, so must continued expressions of ever darkening and forbidding creational positions become manifest in reflection of a consciousness that continues to compound with ill-intended and abrasive attitude and distortion. And so it would rather follow on later reflection that as this was, as it transpired to be, a dark force set up, the culmination, the meeting with the guides supposedly, would in fact take place in the creational spot that all ill-intended, dark force-driven beings call home, the lower astral. And so, having made it through the dark swamps, we came to a similarly uninspiring location, a kind of makeshift series of badly constructed wooden huts, somewhat floating precariously on the swampy waters, and it was here that I would have my meeting with the guides. By now it was very apparent, even to the personal self, no real awareness impressions necessary, that something was amiss, based on the visuals alone. And now there would be the guides, congratulating me on my completed assignments, and presenting me with gifts. I would reach for them tentatively. They consisted of curious black boxes that had a slimy, unpleasant feel to them, and as I turned them over in my hands, would I also notice how black, snake-like tendrils were beginning to emerge from them, and as I more so stepped into my real awareness nowness, so the impressions revealed to me as to the whole objective of what was indeed a dark force set up. For as we agree to ideas, as we place a focus and attention on the creations of others, we also are agreeing to that which created them. for you can't have something effected into a simulation to agree with, without that which is effecting projecting it, that which created it, that which the idea stems from. The movie must always have its projector. The two are indivisible. And so, as we agree with ideas, we agree with the ideas that are the consciousness from where the idea we agree with stems from. And should it be a dark force created idea, we are agreeing then with the dark force creator's consciousness, with its overall intentionality of control. We can inadvertently agree to be controlled by placing a focus, attention, by agreeing with anything a dark force ill-intended, controlling, orientated consciousness has spewed forth, regardless of how good it looks on the surface. And very often the dark forces create on the real side to captivate and draw our attention, to glean our agreement, and should they be successful, then we will experience the effects then of an agreement with what is a controlling, orientated consciousness, and the simulation will roll out accordingly. We have decided to experience being controlled by the dark forces. We are taplined by them, and the black snake-like tendrils emerging from these so-called gifts quite clearly represented taplines. But like any agreement, taplined as we might be, we can as readily redact our agreements, and the taplines are subsequently removed. Nothing is irreversible, but the trick of the controllers is to have us not recognize the deception, and therefore not release the deceptive agreement and tapline, that it is maintained, and we are then the continued effects of their abrasive inclinations. And the dark force reptilians are masterful shapeshifters. They can readily assume the forms of anyone they wish, including the real guides. But again, can the real awareness determine the fake guides from the genuine ones, and read the ill intent as ideas that are generating what is being visually and simulated presented? Evidently then, these guides were dark force characters in disguise, and so I would decline their gifts, returning the boxes to them. Thus, the taplines that were creeping from the boxes to latch onto me would be unable to do so. Despite the forms the dark forces assume, the deceptions they attempt to fool us with, they are generally very emotionally and attitude-driven, and so even without the real awareness, impression, discernment, they often will revert to type and express themselves in very aggressive ways. Such was the case here. When I returned their gifts, the fake guides would descend into fits of rage as I got to my feet and departed. As I've often said, as we decide our experience, as we construct the ideas in our consciousness that effect our simulation, it is we who must decide as to the extent, if at all, others can harm us, as despite an individual's might, the idea of them being able to bestow harm upon us, are also as ideas we must agree with and upload to our simulation affecting a consciousness. Consequently, if such ideas are absent, no being can harm us in any way, despite their best efforts, and this absence of agreement as to their ability to cause us harm will express, in whatever ways it might, on the real side, as they attempt to attack us, as we find ourselves nullifying their attacks in whatever ways we might. For the real awareness is at liberty to defend its created self, as there are no agreements with the personal self-consciousness that are allowing such attacks to be successful, and which would then neutralize the real awareness's ability to put down any assault attempt. For these fake guides could do nothing other than express rage and aggression, and additionally, as I prepared to extricate myself from what was quite clearly now the lower astral, would then demonic-like creatures also attempt to assail me. In appearance they looked like walking gargoyles, misshapen, with overly large and very pointed teeth, but just like the dark forces in the guides' outward appearances, these demonic beings could do nothing to me, as no agreements did my consciousness harbour that allowed that they could. And so I would take to the air and fly from the scene, leaving the enraged fake guides and demons to their little astral spot and their own devices. And so, as I said, another example of the importance of real awareness standing, that the deceptions and the dark forces and their taplining creations can be determined. But then, had I determined this as a dark force set up from the start, I might not have gone through the experience and been able to share such and provide what are in reality further viewpoints and goings on in creation, and regardless of the nature of any experience, it is all really just comparison to recognize the is by. An experience repeated perhaps through my errors, but sometimes we are just meant to go through such. Sometimes the real awareness doesn't afford us impressions for this very reason, as the personal self might not have been very willing to experience such things, and yet the experience was necessary for our continuous awareness process.
That was great, Kevin. What that is it's a reminder. As long as we're in creation, especially here, we need to be reminded where we're at, because we settle in, and it's good. And for the most part, most people don't want to hear this, because they want to continue their routines as they've always been. They'll hear some of it, whatever, and then they'll want to forget it. But no, there was no mistakes. And just like Rebazar and the boys, they're constantly going into dastardly areas to see if someone will wake up. So no, you have the courage to do this and go forward. So really doesn't matter. This is just how it is. This is where we're at here. We're not looking to be okay here, just simply that we do what we do, and we have the experience and the awareness, and there's a lot of people to help and rescue, and that's just how it is. So wherever you're at, yeah, and I'm in these places too. I don't look for happy places to be in. That's not the idea. It's whatever's next, and it all equals your awareness. And again, it's a reminder of what this place actually is. The happy places, yes, they're nice to take a rest and visit once in a while, but you don't want to get set in there because there are people suffering all over in creation. And the reality of life is to wake up and to wake up others. This is the best part. This is why people have children. You don't totally know that to have children is to help the next person wake up. And as generations go along, the next person can do better and help those people that have made certain choices and help them do better too. This is where we all assist each other. So the real guides too, they are constantly having experience also through the survival of life. It's all about surviving. So this is very, very important. So everything that you've done is fine. And it's just the personal self has these ideas. I know they come to me too. I have to deal with this personal self. It's all silly, but we're all the sun shining, and it's what we do that's important, and you're doing it, and it's terrific. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Another Netflix series. Yes, Kevin. I remember that experience you had with David Icke on the real side, and of course, I've seen him too, and many others like him. And basically, they're into themselves, and he wasn't really interested because they're show people, and they want to keep the crowd interested and supportive. And that's how Darwin and Harold were too. They like the audience, and they will provide certain things that make it look good, but not the real essential. That's the difference. So all this phenomena out there is very interesting, and I see it too. It comes and goes, whatever. It's just a rearrangement of words in creation. That's all it is, and people think it's to be something, but no. The reality of our experience here, the best part is when we understand how creation works and can do something that is a real benefit overall and not just pass around rumor stories and information. Okay, so that's just dribble. And so the world is mainly dribble, all these things going on, etc. People wanted to do this or that or get rid of the Fed and all these things. It's not about that. Not about that at all. But you get caught up in all that stuff. It's about how are you going to be created to provide something that references the true reality of all life is instead of just passing around dribble. So again, it's all rearranged words. Anybody can do that, but who can reference this reality and see it? That's the big difference. So yeah, it's a choice people make, and I let them go. I've seen many people come and go, and I let them go. I've seen the best, and I told that one Ava. When I came in with Ava here, and when Ava showed up, I said, "You're going to see some of the best. You're gonna wonder. They're going to go, and they usually do." And so you'll notice that there are certain people that are on the Skypes now because they had enough, but that's okay. The real guides are there for them if they want, but my position is to bring people together to share and go for a bigger picture and a bigger challenge, which I like. It's a lot more fun because no one else will do it. No one else will dare to do it. Those that do, those are the destroyers. They use their means to do it, but with this position here in the new presentation, it's about awareness. And very few people understand that or intent or any of these things, and especially the all is and the real universes. So, yeah, big challenge. Yes, thank you, Kevin. It's really cool. So, hey, everybody makes their choices. Let them go. You just keep going, and let's see who shows up. Well, you never know, and each moment's new. So, the funny thing is that these the cycles that these people are in, or their lifestyle, or whatever, it soon runs out, and as things change, all of a sudden they start seeing more, and they, just like the reptilians and the aliens that have stepped up with us for now, let's see how long it lasts, etc. Because all of a sudden they're waking up to what's really going on. You see, when you look at David Icke and all these people, yeah, it's interesting. They're basically giving you their formulas and the history and all that stuff. but they're not giving you the overall of what's happening in creation. If David Icke was to talk about that, then people would start looking for something that makes sense besides just collecting information. But he's not doing that. Is he talking about the black holes and the galaxies and this physical realm imploding and all that? Well, he doesn't really know that or understand that. And how can you relate that to people? So it sounds like doom, which is understandable, but each person can have their own experiences and see this for themselves as you have, etc. But, most people, as I talk to people too, they don't want to hear the bad things. They have ideas about their la la land life, and they don't want to hear bad things. It's because they don't really see it. You don't really see it. You don't see the bomb until it explodes. But we know the bomb is there and they can explode it at any time. But telling people that, there are, they could explode nuclear weapons, well, until they see it, it's not so. But at that very moment, well, it's such a flash that, of course, you're blank. You don't know what to do. You're just blank. So we know what's going on. And so, again, we're making it available. That's all we can do, because free will is very important to people. Each person must do their free will. Each bird must fly in its own direction. And as you watch, and birds are a very good example, because they don't really always fly straight. They're up and down, left and right, sideways, and all of a sudden they make a big U-turn into the tree or whatever. I mean, who knows where they're going to go? And that's how it is. It has to be like that. It's not like airplanes where, okay, you take this route and you go here. And basically there are variables with that. There's variables with everything. But that's how it must be. Everything must be loose, must have its own freedom of free will, and to understand how that free will works. So, a big challenge, creation and the reality all life is.
Yes, I had an experience where this lady, she came to the right side of where I was sitting down. I don't know who she was. I could barely detect her, but she had a very forceful telling me something. She said, "Do you remember when Jeremy said that when the guides come to the physical realm or the psych realms, they put on a robe or a cloak of isness?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I remember Jeremy told me that." So she said, "Well, when you do the new, shouldn't you be putting on the cloak or robe of business since you're in the physical realm?" And I said, "Well, I thought that the cloak of business or the robe of business was only for extreme emergencies or when we go on assignment." And she said, "Well, if the guides are doing this when they in the physical or psych realms, you should even be doing it more since you're in the physical realm." And I thought, yeah, I didn't think about it that way. So now she suggested, I don't know who she was, she suggested that when I do the new to put on the cloak of isness or the robe of isness. So that was my little experience.
That's very good, Ramon. It's a good reminder. Forget these things, and you. That's so cool that they come to you and remind you. Okay, you're so fortunate that that happens, because very few people listen. So yes, thank you for sharing. Does Mr. Jeremy have anything to say or share today?
I can't. No, nothing really. There was an interesting experience though. I'll share it. It's the open Skype. I'll share this one. This one just happened to me last night. I was going through a military type training, but I was there and I knew it was sort of literal in the sense of like this is a something that could take place in the physical anyways, that I was in this military type place. But what was interesting was they had everybody set up in this giant white triangular structure. And I kind of got the impression that they harvest people, they harvest the emotions from people, whether, they get traumatized from their training or they get tired and sad and happy and all these things. They harvest it. That's why it's triangular in that way. But I was there sort of showing people how to do certain things. I was there sort of assisting others. And what was the other part to that one? Oh, the other part to that one was one of the generals. He approached me. He asked me, are you playing video games? That's what he asked me. And I remember I was kind of taken back by the question. I remember for some reason I lied to him. I said no. No, I'm not. I don't play video games. And then what happened next was very interesting because I typed out his name as if I was going to message him, but his name changed into the symbol of Leo, the astrological sign Leo. So that one was kind of all over the place. I'm still trying to see what I see from that.
Okay, that's cool. You met Leo.
Yeah, it could be. But also to what was a really interesting part, what I mentioned was the triangle, or not the triangle, the pyramid, how they harvest the emotions from people and certain things like that.
Yeah, well, so they have constructed all these things just like Skype and whatever. So we have the awareness to utilize anything we want in the big playground for a benefit, don't we? Anything at all. So that's why you're there. And so you get some views as to, we can do that too. And we'll just use your stuff. Okay? Whatever. So let's see what happens. Yes, thank you, Jeremy. That's cool. You and Ramone, thank you for being there. That's great.